What's up, Taiwan? I'm Laurel Steward with the news from here in Taiwan and around the world. The US should arrange for more high-level official visits to Taiwan. That's according to the American Chamber of Commerce in Taiwan, which released its 2025 white paper on Tuesday.
These visits support strategic coordination, drive regulatory alignment, and demonstrate that engagement with Taiwan is normal, expected, and uncontroversial. High-level exchanges were routine before the pandemic. It's time to reestablish that protocol.
It's the first annual white paper released under the Chamber's new president, Carl Wegner. The organization also called for lowering US tariffs on Taiwanese goods, signing a double taxation agreement with Taiwan, and integrating Taiwanese companies into US defense supply chains. It says such a move would help bolster Taiwan's defense in the face of Chinese military expansion. Burnt out and underpaid, Taiwan's emergency room doctors are leaving the field, and fewer young doctors are stepping in to replace them. Now some hospitals are having to turn patients away. John Van Trieste reports.
Taiwan's emergency rooms are facing an emergency of their own. These have always been high-stakes, high-pressure places, but a growing number of doctors feel it's just too much and just not worth it. The Taiwan Society of Emergency Medicine expects more than 100 doctors will quit emergency rooms this year. And with fewer than 100 med school students even studying emergency medicine, that's a problem for the healthcare system. Taiwan society is rapidly aging, and many doctors are just reaching retirement. But burnout is a big part of the picture too.
你休不到假，你工时非常长，你没有办法准时下班，你得到的钱其实也没有，甚至没有到外面的其他诊所或医美的行业做得多。
急诊的拥塞，那病床的这个降载，让急诊科的医师的这个压力跟风险是在升高的，而导致年轻人可能在这个情况下不愿意选择以急诊专科医师作为他职业的一个优先性的一个选择。
Already, the exodus is biting. Jiayi Changgong Memorial Hospital in southern Taiwan can no longer treat strokes due to a shortage of neurologists. During nighttime hours, the hospital is also turning down transfers of patients over 85 or with conditions that don't obviously respond to treatment. The government has some ideas about how to encourage doctors to stay in the emergency room. More cooperation between hospitals is one, but perhaps the biggest one involves money, including for health insurance benefits like emergency consultation fees.
在健保的给付方面，我们都已经前一阵子在5月1号有投入40几亿，那将会在6月以后就会开始来发放。
Even if some of this money ends up in doctors' pockets, though, the grueling intensity of emergency medicine isn't going away. And so keeping doctors on staff or attracting new med school students into the field could be a lasting challenge. Patrick Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
US President Donald Trump has sounded a positive note about trade talks with China currently underway in London.
I think we're doing very well. They're over there now. I'm only getting good reports. It's a little early, but they'll be calling in soon. In fact, probably when I get back, I'll have my first call from them. We want to open up China.
Trump administration officials met with their Chinese counterparts for several hours on Monday. They reportedly discussed issues including US chip export restrictions and China's curbs on rare earth minerals. The talks are aimed at reducing trade tensions between the two countries and come after Trump's first phone call with Chinese President Xi Jinping since starting his second term in January. The talks in London come as the US raises concerns over China's plans to build a massive new embassy near the city's financial district. The Trump administration says the proposed site could pose a national security threat. To find out more about what they're worried about, Izzy Wells spoke to Luke de Pulford from the UK's Interparliamentary Alliance on China.
So why is the location of the proposed embassy of such concern to the United States?
Well, I think the United States is particularly concerned about the presence of sensitive financial infrastructure cabling that runs directly underneath and is proximate to Royal Mint Court, which is the site that the PRC would like to develop into a new embassy. The worry seems to be that based upon China's history of cable cutting and infrastructure hacks, that it doesn't seem terribly sensible to give them very easy access to cables which serve United Kingdom and United States financial infrastructure. So that's the basis of the concern, as I understand it.
And are these concerns valid?
Well, I think you just have to look at China's behavior. So in the past year alone, there have been 2 confirmed infrastructure hacks on United States infrastructure. One of those embedded malware in US infrastructure with the ability to disable it. Against that backdrop, placing China directly over cables, which are the artery for UK financial services, is ludicrously reckless, and I can completely understand the United States' concerns about that. You know, they have trillions of dollars flowing through the City of London and associated financial services institutions, and there's no reason that we should complain about the US being worried about their adversary, Beijing, potentially having access to that.
Now, Labour has made improving ties with China as part of its pitch to revive the UK economy. How far are relations hanging on this new embassy?
Well, it's pretty clear that it's a diplomatic priority for China. Xi Jinping himself raised this in conversation with Keir Starmer last year, which is highly unusual, by the way, to have a premier of any country say that they want to dictate the location of an embassy. So clearly there's heavy pressure from China over this, and they lost quite a lot of face when their previous application was refused by Tower Hamlets Council. So clearly there's a lot of pressure, and you can understand that the UK is in a tough position because under the previous government, the building was sold to the Chinese. They own it. They own Royal Mint Court. So this is just a question over whether or not they should be allowed to develop it. So you can see the predicament and the difficulty. I think the argument from those of us concerned would be this would be the biggest embassy in Europe with hundreds of PRC state employees, and it poses an unacceptable national security risk because of its proximity to sensitive financial cabling.
And there's also ongoing trade talks between the UK and the US. Is this embassy a significant part of discussions?
Well, the UK and US trade deal is currently being negotiated. I know firsthand that the United States is very concerned about this risk and is raising it as a part of those discussions. I think it matters a lot. The unfortunate thing is that, again, we've had to rely on the United States to try to help us to protect our own interests and our own national security. The United Kingdom should have done this on its own. It shouldn't have required the United States to protect our infrastructure through the prism of theirs. But sadly, that's where we are.
That was Luke de Pulford, Executive Director of the Interparliamentary Alliance on China, speaking to us from London. Taiwanese opera is getting a global twist. In a bold move to reach new audiences, one troupe is teaming up with a European director to reimagine classic Western plays. Cadence Quaranta got a sneak peek at their final dress rehearsal.
A production that pushes the boundaries of what Taiwanese opera can be. This opera, performed entirely in Taiwanese daigi, is an adaptation of a 17th century French comedy, with parts of the story set in ancient China, a bold, cross-cultural take on a traditional art form.
怎么样去展现它的无限可能性，这样的一个雄心壮志是最重要的。
Taiwanese opera has been around for over a century. It was once the most watched art form in Taiwan, especially popular in the 1940s to the 1980s. But for years, its audience has been declining, with less interest among younger generations. It's for this reason that Yixin, a leading Taiwanese opera troupe founded over 35 years ago, has begun expanding beyond the stories and characters normally seen in traditional operas, trying new things to attract new audiences.
它其实它就是为了生存，它必须去符合现代时代的潮流。现在的观众想要看什么，他要根据那个潮流去做它一个改变，去做它的一个变革。
The troupe incorporated LGBTQ issues, adapted a novel, and in recent years has performed adaptations of 2 Western plays, working with German-born, France-based director Lucas Hemleb. This one, titled A Maze of Mirth and Mirage, is their second collaboration with Hemleb, It centers around a story of a father trying to find out about his runaway son, involving many twists, turns, and illusions. It was first performed last year in Taipei and is back this year for a 2-night run at the National Kaohsiung Center for the Arts in southern Taiwan. Hemleb says he's drawn to Taiwanese operas in part because they involve improvisation, similar to an early genre of Italian theater, and in part because of how much the art form values tradition, which he says is not always the case in Europe.
因为我们在欧洲有与传统一个特别的问题，因为我们很容易抛弃传统，因为这个传统是一个非常珍贵的，要保留的珍贵的事情，所以我觉得东方可以教我们一个另外的想法。
But at the same time, he says, tradition can evolve.
一边保留着传统，另一边发展一个特别的观念。台湾是比较年轻的国家，一个年轻的社会，所以他们有可能性。
A Maze of Mirth and Mirage retains many elements of traditional Taiwanese opera, like the language, singing, and movement styles, especially during fight scenes. While also incorporating more Western elements, among them the stage design.
我们这次要呈现的是一个，比较奢华复杂的巴洛克式的风格，所以你可以看到我们的舞美设计呢，你可以感受到浓浓的巴洛克式的那个风格。
Actors were encouraged to think more about the complexity of their characters than they normally would for traditional Taiwanese operas.
像传统歌仔戏呢，它本来就有一些既定的一个表演模式，还有文化底蕴。那这一次卢卡斯导演用《欢愉迷宫》这一出戏跟我们合作的时候呢，在表演的方面呢，其实对于角色人物的复杂性还有立体面，让演员有更多的一个探讨。
Coming from different backgrounds, the first collaboration between Hemleb and the Isin troupe was not without its challenges, like communication difficulties and language barriers. But eventually, they learned to work together. Hemleb directs in Mandarin, but doesn't speak much Taiwanese Daigi. So this time, to work effectively, he relied on memorizing the entire script. And after collaborating on 2 projects, they're already talking about the future. Hemleb says he'd like to work with Isin again, this time on an adaptation of the work of French playwright Molière. And he also dreams of taking these performances abroad to share Taiwanese opera in other parts of the world, a dream Sun shares.
我会很期待的是说，当哪一天我在欧洲的这块土地上，会听到我熟悉的七字调、都马调，我很熟悉的这些歌仔戏的曲牌，可是是在上演欧洲人耳熟能详的经典故事，这是一个多么有趣的一个交流跟结合啊！
Bold ideas like this, decades after the heyday of Taiwanese opera, are breathing new life into a traditional art form, which the Eastern Opera Troupe says is a necessary evolution amid changing audiences and changing times. Klein Wang, Peachy Zhuang, and Cadence Quaranta for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Finally, check out this kinetic art being exhibited in Venezuela. I'm Laurel Steward. Take care and see you next time.